and Sam can testify that working with a lot of our smaller co-impacted businesses, because of the coal industry, we've been very blessed in so many ways. I mean, business is right there across the street from you. So that is one of the big epiphanies that we've had, is getting down to the core kind of competencies like strategic plan. Would you say a ditto amen to that, Sam?
Yes, absolutely.
So if they don't have it, I wouldn't be surprised, and they may, but overall, we have found that to be very common, that it's kind of been here, but nothing real formal, structured, written. And certainly if they do, like a lot, even nonprofits, it sits on the shelf and nobody looks at it. But it can be a very valuable tool.
Yeah, and the only reason why I would suggest thinking about it is when it comes to government business, you can get a jump start on opportunities. And if you get in on an opportunity behind the 8 ball, it's a waste of your time. So the government publishes their federal budgets, so you can see what kind of programs are going to get funded, and you can see what types of things are coming down the pike by looking at your incumbent contracts, contracts that your incumbents have through GSAspending.gov. And so it's worthwhile to sort of have it in your mind what's coming down the pike and how you're going to balance your commercial business with your federal business. So this is one planning approach that I typically use, but if you go out to the websites for strategic planning, you see all different kinds. Typically you want to look at your external conditions. Up until last week and potentially in 3 weeks, the government was shut down, so that means programs are going to be delayed. And that would be an external condition you might want to think about. What are your internal conditions? Do you have a lot of business coming in? Are you like a peak business where there's some months that you really have a lot going on and others not so much? So, kind of balancing that. What are the constraints that you have? It is going to take a while to get these government contracts coming in, so you need to put some upfront resources into it before you ever see any business coming out. The opportunities, once you win in one government agency, it's a lot easier to win in other government agencies, so you have a lot of opportunities. You can also take what you're doing at the federal level and bring it down to the state level, because oftentimes your state agencies have the same needs. Do you have a question? Or you just,
For me?
yeah.
I'll probably flip this.
Okay, no, that's fine. You need certain policies in place in federal contracting. So, for example, you would need to make sure your marketing people know that they can't, take federal agencies' personnel to lunch or to, give them golf umbrellas or things like that. So, just certain policies. What kind of assumptions are you making as you get more entwined in government business? You see that some agencies are really prompt when they say that they're going to issue an RFP by a certain date and they're going to make an award decision, and then you can plan for it. Other agencies, they just put it out there as if it's a wild guess, and you're spending your resources pursuing that, and then there's this big delay, and it causes, the opportunity doesn't come in as fast as you think it is. So you start to make some decisions yourself as to which agencies you want to work with and which ones you don't want to work with. What are your objectives within various agencies? What are you trying to accomplish? If your competitor has 50% of the business already, what's realistic for you to be able to achieve within that agency? What kind of programs are out there to support you? For example, there's a program that's called the Mentor Protege Program, where you can actually get partnered with a large company, and they'll work with you on your you sort of establish what the relationship looks like between the two of you. They get a tax break by being your mentor, and you get the experience of working with a large company on a couple of these programs. They tend to bring you in on opportunities that they have, so it's a nice way to grow your business. And then the typical project management type skills of, once you win the contract, putting the project plan in place to be able to manage it effectively. With the schedules and the financials. So again, this is just an example of a strategic planning process. Really what you want to do when you get to a particular opportunity is develop a marketing plan for that specific opportunity. And the first thing that you should start with is the agency's website and understand what the agency's mission is, because that's going to give you an overarching understanding of what the agency is responsible for. Every time the government issues an RFP, they are supposed to write up a background of how this particular opportunity fits in with that mission, so you want to understand what the linkages are there. And then you have to figure out which department within the agency has a need for your goods or services. So there's some agencies I go to, like CDC, and every day I go there, I learn about new things that they do. They're just so all-encompassing. So you have to do some digging to figure out which agency within the organization needs your goods or services. And then sort of the mindset that you get into is how can you help them meet their agency mission? So, the government's very open to innovative ways of meeting their requirements, but you do have to talk to them about it ahead of time, maybe through white papers, through questions. And then what features do your products or services have that attracted customers to your company? So, knowing what you have is really important, and knowing why your existing commercial customers come to you gives you some hint about what you can promote to the federal government about why they should come to you. So information that's readily available are agency budgets, their mission and goals, their organization charts, any GAO reports that have been done on them are all examples of where you can get information. They do, a lot of their agency heads will speak at lunches up in DC or various conferences, so if you see that they're coming, that might be worthwhile.
That time it was real. For the companies that are in here that are part of the HEART project, and if they haven't already, while strategic planning is important, it can be a little overwhelming if you're not used to it, but it really needs to be done. But a part of their participation that's paid for by the HEART money is they can have technical assistance provided by Gen Ed to help them walk through the whole process.
There you go.
So they don't have to do it alone. So just know that if you haven't done it, that's available to you. You just need to see Sam and he'll take care of it. And he's already done it with several companies, but do know that is a service available to you.
Yeah, and if you need additional funding from banks or from investors, they're going to want to see a strategic plan, so it's worthwhile to have it done. So if you think about a planning process, either at the strategic level or at the marketing level, the first thing you do is you gather data. One of my colleagues in my doctoral program, he did his dissertation on boards of directors. And one of the things that he found was that a lot of boards of directors, the CEO was just feeding them information from their company. So it was like they just heard about their own company in relation to anything. They didn't hear about external sources. And when they didn't get that external source data, it's like we're watching Fox News or watching CNN when you only hear one perspective. That's what happens when you are only looking at internal data. You need to look at external data to be able to see how your organization fits into the competitive landscape. What kinds of things, read the book, many years ago, Who Moved My Cheese, right? That cheese can move at a moment's notice, right? And so you need to be tuned into what your competitors are doing to see how you can position yourself. So gathering data both internally and externally. Then you develop the plan, you communicate the plan to the people within your organization responsible for each of the components, and then you spend some time evaluating the plan. If it becomes shelfware, it's a wasted exercise. But if you go back and reevaluate it and see if you're on track, or where have you fallen short, or where have you exceeded your expectations, that becomes part of the evaluation, and then you revise the plan to support those changes. And you need to be striking the right balance, because these opportunities that come forth in the government, particularly the first couple ones, until you get your sea legs, they're going to be expensive to go after, right? Because you have to sort of get yourself geared up to going after these procurements. And the expenditure, you have to compare against, what kind of profit are you going to get as a result? What's your win percentage? What we call probability of win, P-win. But it's basically what are the chances that you actually have of winning this thing? And what's the return on your investment? So those are the things that you're kind of balancing, these various opportunities against your internal expenditures. So if you think about opportunities, more than likely for a lot of your agents, for a lot of your products and services, there are lots of different agencies that need to buy it. And lots of balls that you can choose from. But you can't go after all of them because it's just too expensive. So you have to narrow down funnel down to which opportunities you're specifically going to go after. And you base that decision on these factors. You know, what's the buying pattern of the agency? You know, do they buy things in the way that you typically sell things? Or is it going to be a lot of extra overhead for you? So for example, if they buy paint and you sell paint, that's like a one-for-one match. But if they buy painting services that includes the paint, but they also want you to develop training rooms where you have to put in the lights and the AV and all this other kind of furniture, do you want to broaden out into those other areas? Or do you want to stick with just paint? If you want to stick with just paint, and you still are interested in that opportunity, then you go find a prime contractor who's going after it and you sell them paint. Or you decide that you're not going to go after that opportunity because they want to bundle it in a way that's not conducive. It's going to cost you a lot more overhead to go research AV systems and furniture manufacturers, etc., that you'd say no to that opportunity. Or you find an opportunity that just is asking for paint and you go after that. So those are the buying pattern things. Do you have any relationship with that customer? You know, if you've been there before and you're working in their offices on a day-to-day basis, you know, you start to pick up other needs that they have. And sometimes you can just do additional work under your existing contract. They just need to add some more money to it and you can do some additional work. So relationship has a lot to do with it. Who are the incumbents? You know, did the incumbent just win the procurement or have they been entrenched for the last 30 years? You know, you probably aren't going to go up against them if they've been there for 30 years because chances are there's some really close relationships that have been developed there and it's just not worth your while. So look for other places that you can do it. Do you have a solution that can win? You know, what makes you different than your competitors? Because if your competitors are going after it and they're highly superior, then don't waste your time on it. But figure out where your niche product is or niche service that you can go after and be the best at it. And then who could you partner with? You know, there's lots of companies down here in Southwest Virginia that you can look at. You can also look at other places in the state to partner with companies. There's lots of avenues for partnering. That's something to look at. So if you think about it, time marches on. And if you decide, for example, that your product or service is best suited for DoD, you've got, you know, the Navy, the Army, the Air Force, you've also got the Marines. And each of them have multiple RFPs coming out. So what you have to do is figure out which agency you're looking at, and then which particular RFPs have a need for your product or service. So you sort of map these on a timeline, because, you know, particularly when you get started, you don't want to be doing 4 proposals at the same time, because you're not going to do any of them well. But if you can map them out over time, based on what the due dates are for each of these, you can get a better sense of what your workflow needs to look like. And then you figure out what your business portfolio needs to be. So there are going to be some things that you want to go after for a strategic reason. You know, that if you get into this agency now, you know that they're going to have a big procurement down the road and you really want to be positioned for that. So you come and take maybe a smaller piece of work now just to get your feet in the door so that you can be positioned for that bigger. So that's a sort of a strategic part of it.
You did mention though that if you do, you know, work as a subcontractor, how it doesn't give you that accolade of like the past experience bragging rights. So at what point, you know, will that experience actually be able to carry over and transition to allow you to start gaining some of that past experience?
Sure, so you can always write a paragraph in your proposal that says, I did work for NHS under the Lockheed contract. So you always have that kind of kudo to let them know you've worked in their space before. You just don't get the official past performance of a CPARS or a PPIRS, that's all. So quite honestly, if you get in as a subcontractor, you're going to be in the government agency working with government people, and you're going to get the same benefit as your prime contractor of getting to know what the needs are. Probably even more so, right? Because you're hands-on. And so you can be, I want to be ethical here, but I also want to tell you how it really happens. Some prime contractors will say there's a non-compete clause. You know, they brought you in, they don't want you to have the benefit of having gotten additional experience. But on the same token, There are times where you get in under a prime contract and the government has requirements that you can fill but the prime contractor can't. And that's happened with me on numerous occasions. So even though I come in as a sub, I end up as a prime on other parts of work there. So don't turn down subcontractor opportunities just because of the past performance thing, because sometimes it leads to that anyway. So we talked about the strategic. White space is another one. White space means that you don't have any contracts with this particular agency, and this is going to be your first one. This is the sexy kind of opportunity, right? Everybody wants to go after the brand new client. These are the hardest ones to get, right? Because you don't have any relationship with them yet. It's white space, and you're trying to start something. And so while your company may get really excited about, oh, this is the first contract we ever got with NIH, know that there's a big lead-up time to getting that contract. More typically, when you win that first government contract, if you can do your possibilities of doing organic growth on that particular contract, this is where your bread and butter comes in. Because once you have that customer, and you see that, well, gee, they're having problems with project management, maybe I could offer a project management course. Or maybe they're always behind in writing functional requirements. I could help them write functional requirements. Whatever the needs are that you're seeing, that's where you can really grow your business. And so you just need to be tuned into that. And you need to teach your people who are going to be on site at these various government agencies to be tuned into that, because that's where you can really grow your business. And then the last piece are the recompetes. Contracts that either your competitors have today and that you want to win tomorrow, or contracts that you have today that you want to keep tomorrow. Because again, it goes back to that, what have you done for me lately? You know, what makes you, why should I pick you again? Or why should I pick you over who I already have? So that's another avenue of resource. Okay. Any questions about any of that? Let's, okay, what I'm going to do is I'm going to talk a little bit about how we get NAICS codes, and I'm going to talk a little bit about the small business stuff. And then I'm going to give you time to go to these sites, find the NAICS codes that you, for your company's products and services, and then you can look up your small business size to see whether or not you're considered small business. All right. So, okay, so as we said yesterday, NAICS code stands for National Association of Industry Classification, and every product or service that you offer has an associated NAICS code. So you have to find what the NAICS codes are for the products and services that you're going to offer. You're going to have some time to do this today. As long as you find at least 3, if you want to do all of your products and services, that's fine. You can start that process in class and then finish it up later. But for purposes of this class, I'm going to ask you to focus on 3. So the reason why we have NAICS codes is to give people both in industry and government a common language. What you'll find is that government agencies will use this NAICS code in their RFPs to identify the products and services they want to buy. And you can search on these NAICS codes to figure out which customers need your products and services, which is this point. They give you a way to search for opportunities and fit biz ops. NAICS also need to be listed on your SAM record. So whenever you go after a brand new procurement, the government is going to look at your SAM record for the NAICS codes that are in that RFP, and they want to verify that they're on your SAM record. So you want to make sure that they're there. And SAM is that system we talked about that you have to be enrolled in before you can obtain payment or go after deals in the government. Okay. So how do you determine the NAICS code? The first thing you need to do is think about it from take a very internal view. Out of everything you do, what do you want to sell to the federal government? What can you be competitive at? What do you have a strong story to tell about? And so you need to think about which products and services